can find us too. I'm really excited. The Loki after party ended and folks were like, are you going to do it for What If? And I was like, I don't know. Cause like, I don't understand how the show's going to work. Like it's going to be a completely different thing every episode. Right. But then I posted a video for just my friends on TikTok. And I was like, should I do a What If after party? And Alexis, you commented and you were like, yes, you should. And I was like, you know what? Like she's exactly the kind of person I need doing this with me. Cause you know so much about the variety of things that could potentially happen and the backstories of people. Like you've got that expertise. It's very well-rounded to look at a show like this and be, know how good it could be if they tried to make it as good as it could possibly be. Yeah. And I think that's going to be one of the themes of tonight's conversation. Thank you for the gifts on TikTok. I really appreciate it. So tonight we're going to talk about the first episode of What If. We have a lot to talk about. We are going to take it for the good, the bad, what we would have liked to have seen, maybe what we think will come next. Again, join us on Twitch and YouTube to get the full experience here. But before we get started, y'all, we have a sponsor, which is like the wildest thing I've ever said in my life, that this show in its third season has a sponsor, but we do. If you're watching on YouTube and Twitch, they're hanging out at the top of the screen there. But the lovely folks at Grindhouse Apparel, let me show y'all the logo. They're sponsoring season 3 of Stark Radio, which is the wildest thing ever. They print vintage movie posters on sweaters and shirts and stickers and all kinds of stuff. This is my favorite, the James Dean sweater. I keep calling it the James Dean Daydream sweater because of like the Taylor Swift song. You know, I think she would approve. And I'm also wearing the James Bond shirt tonight because I think they knew that Stark Radio is very pink in its branding. So they're like, let's send her the pink shirts too. So if y'all are interested, you can go to Grindhouse Apparel and Stark Radio will give you 10% off your order if you use that code. So at the end of the show, I'll give you the code again in case you want to go shop. But for now, Alexis, welcome to the What If After Party. Why don't you tell the folks who you are if people don't know you, if people don't follow you, which I don't know what you're doing if you're on TikTok and you're not following Alexis, because she's literally my favorite creator. I learn from you every day and you're also hilarious. So tell the people who you are and what you thought of episode 1.
I'm Alexis at Alexis Blake Reads Comics, and I read Marvel comics and I talk about them and the MCU. I've gotten roped into talking about the MCU a lot.
Yes.
I like to say I analyze comics and Bucky, and mostly Bucky. Like that's usually what happens, but that's me.
And I will say I'm part of the blame for that. I do often go in your comments saying, listen, can you like explain this thing to me? Or like, oh, you mentioned this. Like, do you want to elaborate? Including probably one of the most outrageous asks I've ever made of anyone on TikTok when I was like, can you explain like just an overarching theme of what happened to Bucky in the comics? I'm so confused. And you did. And I was like shocked when I watched it. I was like, oh man, there's like so much here. I did not realize what I was asking when I commented this. So thank you. I really appreciated it.
I got like halfway through and I was like, oh, there's much more Bucky than I thought about. This is also simple in my head, but timeline-wise, this is complicated.
But you know what? The beauty is I didn't know the difference. Like, you could have said literally anything. Like, all I would have known is if you had said, like, there was a cat, he loved Natasha, and he turned himself in for crimes he didn't commit. Like, those were the only 3 plot points I knew had, like, anything to do with Bucky in the comics, and I had no idea how it all fit together, because those are 3 very different plot points. Like, they do not cross over much at all, I think. Or maybe they do. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like if those are the 3, if you're only going to know 3 plot points, those are actually pretty good ones.
Okay.
Those
very
are the
valid.
ones that matter to me anyway.
Okay. Very valid. Very valid. I love it. So the moral of the story is I have to go read the comics now and really get into this plot, and then post reaction as I do it being like, y'all, Alexis really like knows what she's doing here, because it's way more complicated than I ever could have thought. But you've given me suggestions on where to start. So maybe that will be my fall reading project. Is okay, I'm finally going to dig into the MCU. Finally going to get through the Bucky comics. But yes, let's talk about What If. Let's talk about episode 1. We were chatting a little bit before we went live. Oh my God, my phone's going to die. Why did I not think of this before we went live? Plugging in my phone could be a good place to start.
I literally plugged mine in like seconds before you started.
Okay. Beautiful. At least one of us knew what we were doing. I think I probably even said, like, make sure your stuff's plugged in, and then there's me. No, can't take my own instructions. Hold on. Let me plug this in before we get started or else I'll forget. All right. Episode 1 of What If. Take it away. Give us like your overall feelings. I think the perfect name for this segment of the show, if you watched the Loki after party, we called the first section of the show Predicting the Timeline, where we talked about predicting the timeline of Loki. But I think that the true name for What If is just WTF. Do you have thoughts on that? Do you have a different suggestion for what we can call this first segment? Nobody gets it. So let's call it the WTF section of the show. Give me your initial impressions of what went down in this incredible episode 1.
I think my initial reaction was like, eh? Like, I'll be honest and say that it is the first of the Marvel shows that I had to stop halfway through and like take a minute before I finished it.
Okay, at which point did that happen?
I think I want to say I stopped at the Bucky stole a Jeep. Like it was right then, and I was like, I just need a minute to figure out
make some mental notes about what's happening. Yeah.
I think I had really expected something different. And so I was trying to determine how much of my disappointment was because I expected something different versus how much of it was just because I didn't feel like the episode worked.
That's fair.
And I think I mostly just didn't think the episode worked.
Okay, so that's valid. I think that's a take that I've seen quite a few people agree with across TikTok. I'm trying to be very forgiving and like how I'm going to talk about this initially, because I do think that Marvel like deserves credit for trying something different here. But I completely agree with you. I could not be more on the same page around like that halfway point, really having to reevaluate like, okay, wait, like what are we actually doing here? Because this is not really the far out show that I had expected to turn on. I really thought like, and we talked about this a little bit, how when they said infinite timelines and the Avengers and the characters, like in new roles, I really thought that meant new plots, right? Yes, so halfway through the episode, when I realized really when we got to the scene, which was, I thought, actually probably the best scene in the episode, when they're in the air, Steve and Captain Carter, and they're kind of like taking out the planes and fighting. Yes. I was like, okay, this is new, but this is probably like the only new element they've added, and it's not really adding anything other than like some excitement and proof that she's good at what she's doing here. And otherwise, this is the exact same Captain America plot that we've seen a million times. And that was when I had to take a step back and go like, oh, this is not actually new. We're not watching new Marvel plots. We're watching the same Marvel plots that we've seen a million times with like one or two switcheroos. Which there's some comfort and familiarity. Right. There's some, there's something to be said for that. But I don't really think it's living up to maybe how it was promoted to be.
Okay, right.
I really thought we were going to have some brand new takes on what it would mean to have a female Captain America, and some brand new takes on women in the war and, these themes that Captain America explores. Someone in the comments is saying they're about to go watch the episode of What If. Bestie, go watch it and then come back and watch the rest of the after party, because you're about to hear all the spoilers. And so we have the Keeg here saying it was definitely a pilot episode through and through. And I think that that's a fair assessment. It was a safe pilot with an easy plot. And now that we've given it the forgiving take, let's really dig into like what we saw here. Why don't we start at the beginning of the episode, right? Okay. So we see, Steve is supposed to be going in to super soldier serum, and then like bang, bang, and all of a sudden it's Peggy Carter. And then we have this beautiful moment where she's revealed in the exact same way as the original Captain America movie, that she is a super soldier, even the same posture in the machine. Yeah. You have Howard Stark doing the same, like, dear God, what have we done? Super soldier, whatever kind of Howard thing that he does. And that was really it. You know, kind of, I felt it lacked a little bit of luster. I was like, okay, we've seen this exact reveal before. No fresh takes.
Yeah. I think what I wanted from the get-go was that I didn't necessarily want this to be the one small change, right? Like, I wanted to kind of be in another universe to begin with. So what I had been hoping was that we were in some other universe where they had made lots of small different decisions from ours that had resulted in them wanting to choose a female super soldier. And I feel like if you would have gone that route, then mimicking these kind of moments and calling back to Captain America would have actually like been nostalgic rather than like, why am I just seeing the same thing but with Peggy? I was not a fan of the fact that like she became the first super soldier on accident, essentially.
Yes. And when that decision was being made, it was riddled in misogyny, right? Like, even in that moment when Howard's like, we only have seconds left, you have the general character, I forget what his name was, going like, no, like, can't waste it on a woman,
Yes. No.
I was like, even for the time, I feel like if the whole lab was about to explode, some rationality would have said, put it in somebody instead of nobody.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I just felt like it was a little bit, it was scripted in the wrong way for how I feel like that moment could have genuinely happened, right? Which is why you have Howard say like, no, you're being ridiculous. Like, put her in the machine. Let's like make a super soldier or whatever. We're not going to waste this one moment and millions of dollars. And that was the first instance of them trying to do misogyny, right, in the episode that I did not disagree with, or that I did disagree with.
Right.
And then I was kind of like, I had to tilt my head a little bit and go like, okay, that was an interesting way to approach this topic. Marvel has a long history of not really writing their female characters well, and that was the first moment of the episode where I was like, uh-oh. What is this about to be? Oh no. Yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, so Agent Carter was a show that I feel like the first season of actually dealt with sexism and misogyny really well in a way that felt grounded. This to me just felt like, ooh, it's a girl. Like, it didn't feel like, you know, like there was actually, they didn't discuss that there was any reason that she wasn't competent. And to me, like, if he would have just said something like, well, you know, you're not as strong in the field or you don't have whatever. Like, there were other things to be said that would have gotten that misogyny across in a way that wasn't just Bradley Whitford being like, ew, women. Like,
ew, girl, no.
Like, cooties, no, now nobody can get in the machine. Like, it was a little bizarre.
Right. So, and I also had issue with how, like, the reasoning they did use. Right. So to me, there was like one strong point that came out, which was, as in the only point that felt like they were trying to ground the reasoning for this, which was like, this is all we have. This is like all the super soldier, right? Like, they're like, it's going to be a waste. It's all going to go in this one person. And I was like, okay, but you had the scrawniest, most sick kid in Brooklyn. And you were totally cool with giving it to him, right? This very unhealthy, scrawny kid that you wouldn't have cared if they had died, if like something had gone wrong, right? And that was totally cool. No one had any issue with that. But you have a perfectly healthy woman, and you're like, no, it's gonna be a waste if it all goes on one person. Like, at least she was healthy. Like, think about it like on that like end of the spectrum. Like, in terms of a science experiment, she probably was a much better pick than this specific Steve Rogers was.
Right.
So I also felt like the reasoning they did try to throw at us in that moment also just like immediately I was like, that's a very stupid thing to say. Like, that also doesn't work for me right now. Like, give us anything, because all these reasons don't work. So I think that was one of the first indications that the writing of this episode was going to be a very interesting undertaking.
Well, and I guess my question too was, if it is that bad for it to be her, why doesn't someone just take it out? Like, you couldn't have just removed the serum from...
Pop, run away! Like,
right? Because, like, the thing in Captain America, the First Avenger, is that he has already gotten it when the lab blows up. So, like, there was no other recourse you could have taken. But, like, she could have just been like, poop! Well, if not me, like, I guess we'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get that either.
Yep. I'm with you completely. So I think for this scene, we'll say it was like a hard question mark of a moment. It was like none of the reasoning worked. The reveal lacked luster because it was the exact same that we had seen in the original Captain America movie. That wasn't really an original twist that grounded the misogyny for the episode. And for all of those reasons, I give it a big question mark of like, okay, I'm not really sure where we're going from here, but sure enough, the episode did continue, unfortunately. And I'm being harsh, but I'm being harsh because I really am hoping that in future after parties, we're going to have a lot of positive reflections to talk about, right? Like I'm really holding on to how great the concept for this series is and how, the Watcher like has a great comics history and could really step in and cause some drama. And you're bringing in characters like Star-Lord, but it's T'Challa, and there's like a lot more. Hopefully, there's a lot more there that can be explored than what we saw in this episode. So I want to just say we're being critical in this moment in the hopes that in future episodes we'll have a lot of positives to take away. Just to preface, someone here on TikTok saying, I thought it was because they wouldn't be able to build another lab too, which is why she had to get it. So
maybe that was it. Yeah.
So see, this is the whole thing, right? Like we should all be on the same page about this. Like this should be extremely clear to everyone. And the fact that we have different perceptions, and I'm not saying that, Alexa, I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I think that probably was part of the reasoning. But the fact that wasn't explicitly clear.
Right.
Is, I think, also part of the issue with this episode is that we all kind of had a different, like, kind of, none of us should be saying, like that just shouldn't even be like a part of this. We should be like, oh, it's great. But no, we're all like, that's going to be the Instagram preview when I post, like, oh, go back and watch the episode, just you and me going, So let's move on from the lab and how we felt about that. What part of the episode do you want to go to next? You make the next move here.
Oh, no. I don't like that at all.
What's in your head like about the next another piece of this episode that you want to dig into?
I mean, you know that I want to talk about the whole rescuing Bucky thing.
Let's talk about it. If you know me, if you've watched any of the Stark Radio seasons, if you watch me on TikTok, I am a Bucky Barnes girl through and through. This man has me like I could never have another favorite Marvel character. It's horrible how much of a hold he has on me. So let's talk about Bucky Barnes. I would like to preface this segment of the show by saying that I really feel like the script for Bucky was rough. I've seen a lot of commentary around Sebastian Stan's voice acting. And this is not an opinion on Sebastian Stan. I really feel like he was given a tough script to do justice. And we'll talk more about this, but I really do want to say that this is not a reflection on the acting of Sebastian Stan or, I really feel like let's talk about what they did to Bucky in this episode and how they rescued him and how he evolved from there with the understanding that this is not like a personal attack on Sebastian Stan. I've unfortunately seen a lot of people today bashing Sebastian Stan for what happened to Bucky in this episode. And I'm like, do y'all realize this is animated? like Sebastian Stan did not act this out. He was given a script and told what to say. Like he holds no responsibility for this. Let's just make that clear right off the jump that, separate actor from the work. But take it away. Talk to me about Bucky, about when he gets saved. Maybe I'll flash this moment up on the screen for a minute and give people the real context.
I actually had an issue with this moment. Okay.
Okay.
So from the top, how I interpreted this was that because Steve was involved in the USO show, he was late to rescue Bucky. So Bucky had already been experimented on, right? He had gotten the serum. Whereas in this version, because Peggy doesn't, which I actually have issue with in the narrative, because I don't think it was precisely clear as to whether Peggy didn't because she was uninterested, or whether Peggy wasn't involved in the USO tour because they were uninterested in Peggy now that she was super Peggy and less idealistically feminine in the 1940s, which is an issue. But anyway, so she doesn't do the USO tour and thus can rescue Bucky before he gets the serum.
Right.
And the problem I have with this is that it implies that, like, because Steve made this choice to be a dancing monkey, his friend had a terrible life. like that's somehow now all on Steve in a way that I don't. And for the show as a whole, I feel like if you would have said it in another universe, then these parallels become less problematic because there are lots of other reasons they could have happened. But in a universe that's so close to the first Avenger, like, the only reason this happened was because Peggy was less ideally feminine and Steve wasn't a dancing monkey. And thus
Bucky Barnes became the Winter Soldier.
Right? And I have an issue with that line in particular because I felt that it was a callback.
This line in this moment to be this one or the Queen of England line?
The Queen of England line.
The Queen of England line. Let's find it here. There we go.
Because I felt like it was a callback to Captain America, the First Avenger, where the soldier tells Peggy that he signed up for the U.S. Army and she punches him in the face. And that, like, it just felt so wrong coming from Bucky for me. I'm like, I get that, like, he's kind of feisty, but, like, what was that misogyny that just came out of his mouth?
Yep. So I felt like it was a very off character comment for Bucky.
Yeah.
Extremely so. Like, I really would have to go back and rewatch and dissect every Bucky Barnes performance for my next statement to hold truth. But I really don't feel like Bucky Barnes has had much, if any, misogyny written into his character development in the MCU.
And, like,
I mean, there's a bar for Marvel and it's low, but I feel like Bucky really did do the least to pass it. So when he said this comment, I was like, and what characteristic of Bucky is this comment stemming from? Because it has to come from something. And if it's not coming from something, it's just bad misogynistic writing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just the truth of it, right? It's either thoughtful and being pulled from something, like the comments around, Peggy not being a show pony for the U.S. recruitment, and that's grounded in something, or it's from writers.
Yes.
Right? So I'm missing something in, like, the Bucky plotline where he has these tendencies to, like, call out women, or someone thought that was a funny joke and it didn't translate.
Yeah. That's what I think happened.
Yeah. We're not gonna make any claims. I think that writers do the best job they can, but that, I think, they were trying to introduce kind of this charming Bucky, but misogyny isn't charming, and that's the lesson of the episode, everyone.
I want that on her shirt.
I'm making a merch store. Maybe I'll just have to do it. Misogyny isn't charming. I'll put, like, the Winter Soldier logo beside it, just so it's crystal clear. Alexa on my TikTok is saying, I also think it's because she's not American too, which is why they wouldn't put her in that position to go tour and recruit more people, which that's, also fair and valid. But why are we having a conversation where everyone has different takeaways about reasoning in this episode for a plot that we've all seen a million times as well, right? Like, it should either be grounded and be specific and crystal clear, or it should be new and inventive. And it was neither. It was a middle ground. And this is the moment where Steve kind of makes those comments around Peggy being so lucky she didn't have to go be a show pony in the States. And I also kind of found that interesting because I was like, this is supposed to be like a charming, like, kind of flirty moment or whatever. And she's pissed and throwing things into the wall and you're giving her like the it could be worse speech. You know, like it was very pick me energy from Steve, which again, I have never seen pick me energy from Steve Rogers in the MCU. So where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm. I did feel like, so in Captain America, the First Avenger, and then Dennis, I'll answer your question. I see you. But they have that conversation in the car where he's talking about all the alleys he got beat up in, right? And Peggy's like, yeah, like the world is hard for me too, right? And he like skips over it, right? And I listened to this commentary on it about how like she's trying to relate to him there and he's just missing the point. And somehow that conversation in What If, it felt the same way to me, where he's like, but at least you don't have to be a show pony. Like it was like, there's just a connection here that's not.
And yet that was the moment where they just started to fall in love.
Right.
He says that, and the beautiful lighting changes on both their faces and they smile at each other. Immediately after she's been throwing things into the wall.
Yes.
So I'm correct. And that's so okay, so let's move on from that moment, maybe specific. And I feel like that really kind of tells that part of the story and move back to when let's pay her dues a little bit. They really did a great job with her fighting. Yes. I felt like they did a great job with the action sequences. The plane sequence was, I thought, fantastic. And seeing how, Steve worked with her and wasn't like Steve was still the lead and Captain was kind of second. Like it was really, she was powerful and she was kicking ass and all these things. And when she's going to save Bucky and she's realizing how powerful she is and taking out the cars and this, that, and the other thing, I felt like, that was well done. I felt like that was well done. I felt like it could have been better, but I felt like it was well done. And it showed a powerful Captain Carter in her own new strength, finding her strength and not being apologetic about it and kicking ass and taking names and all those things. And then when Sebastian and the guys come in with her, she's still leading. They're not like kind of overshadowing or taking over or anything like that. They do let her kind of lead. Which I thought was great. And that's kind of the end of my thought before I get negative. I'm trying to really let the positive have a moment there. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. I thought it was really nice to see. I think Goosey used the term ruthless. I kind of like that ruthless energy from her. That's something that kind of like back alley brawling style is something we see from Peggy in the MCU as well.
Yep.
I do think she got an opportunity to lead, which was great. I guess I also questioned why the assistance of a Hydra Stomper was necessary for her when it hadn't been for Steve. But that aside, I do think the fighting was really great. Good animated fighting.
Yep. Yes, I agree with you completely. And there's a parallel that I saw drawn on TikTok earlier today that I want to shout out. So it's someone, I think their @ is Bunky with 3 Ys, or it's Bucky with 3 Ys. I think it's Bunky with an N. Okay. Anyway, they posted a TikTok earlier today around how the parallels between Steve and Peggy and Steve and Bucky from the original Captain America movie. There are meant to be parallels in those relationships, right? But only one is romantic. And like Peggy and Steve have a romantic relationship in What If? And yet there are moments that parallel to what Bucky and Steve did in the comics, in the original Captain America First Avenger movie that are not meant to be romantic. And why Marvel would use the Bucky Steve moments to draw those parallels in What If. And this is not me saying that like I believe in Steve and Bucky being romantic or like it's not to say anything like that, just opposed to the overarching problem in Marvel of queer coding in some of the original writing and then denying down the line. So do you have any thoughts like on that end of some of the parallels that were drawn?
I think my favorite part of this show experience was getting on Twitter afterwards and seeing that everyone was like, well, thank you, Marvel, for validating my ship.
Yes, very, very much.
I also feel like it's one of those things, like I say all the time, that I feel like as fans, in the best possible way, that we add more to the MCU than was necessarily intended. And I do think this was not something that they had intended. I don't think they intended for people to be like, oh, these parallels are validating that Bucky and Steve were romantic.
Yes.
I don't think that was Marvel's intent. I do think it happened anyway.
I do think it happened anyway. I'm with you completely. It was a great day to be a Stucky shipper.
Yes.
It was a great day.
I'm in my Bucky shirt and my Steve socks.
Oh, there you go. Let's see the socks.
Just have Steve on
Love. I have Captain America socks. I don't know where they are right now. I should have put them on for the show. I usually have them close by because I get cold while I'm working. Okay, next show I will wear my Captain America socks. I also have Iron Man socks, so I'll just keep them handy. And then depending on which episode comes next, we might see an appearance. Shout out to everyone watching. If you have favorite Marvel shops, please drop them because I'm about to go on a shopping spree and I could use some new Marvel swag. But besides the point, great day to be a Stucky shipper.
Yes, agreed.
Great day to be a Stucky shipper. And I think also just a great day to be a Bucky fan. If you like corny Bucky, we really were served.
And fish.
If you like fish, if you like Bucky, if you like Stucky, it was a great day. From, oh wow, who ordered the calamari, to, woo, thanks, you almost ripped my arm off. It was truly an experience to watch this episode.
I think I wanted much more of the woo, you almost ripped my arm off energy. Because to me, that is like a clever and funny callback. Like it makes you think and it makes you laugh. And I wanted more of that as opposed to like, here is this exact same thing, but a little bit different. Like to me, that's funny. Like because, oh, you didn't die this time.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the way that Sebastian delivered that line was also very funny because it was very light. You almost ripped my arm off. As if he hasn't been the man playing Bucky, who's had severe trauma for like the past 11 years, and he can pull off that line like as light as he did. I was like, oh my God, they really did us like that. They really went that way with this. Okay. And the other moment that I thought was particularly funny, which I don't have a photo of to show everyone watching on YouTube and Twitch, but when Steve gets back in the suit at the end of the episode and he says, like, where's Peggy? And Bucky's like, oh, she took the uproot. And then Steve says nothing and he just blasts through the ceiling without hesitation. I thought that was hilarious in that moment. I had to rewind and watch it again. I was like, wow. Okay. He really just said, screw Bucky. Like, absolutely not. Not going to take anyone with me. I'm not going to say, okay, everyone hop in. Let's all, like, go together. No, he just said, I'm out.
I actually liked that, like, whole sequence. I liked Bucky's conversation with Peggy there, too.
Yeah.
Like, I liked the idea that they had worked long enough together to, like, have a shorthand.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was cool. I thought the whole Steve bit was funny. I thought I liked the idea that, like, the suit needed to be charged, but, like, how long was that going to last? Like, I thought all of that was great.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I really liked how it really showed, again, the men respecting Peggy and her new role of authority. I was like, all right, no one is asking questions now. Miss Peggy is jacked and has proven her worth. We have a photo here of Miss Peggy jacked and proving her worth. She really stepped up and said, no, all of y'all are going to listen to me. I am in charge, not you. And they were like, all right.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Anything for Steve Rogers, according to Bucky, right? Like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Yep, let's avenge him.
I think I know him too. Buddy.
I forgot about that part. This truly is a gift that keeps on giving. The more you unpack this episode, the more amazing realizations I'm having. And I'm just looking at like what we have here. And I want to pull up this. This is one of the graphics that Marvel released today. Marvel Studios has delivered a mind-bending MCU masterpiece. Well, certainly mind-bending. I don't know what y'all think watching. Certainly mind-bending in its own way. Let's take a step back from the plot for a second here and talk about one of the pieces I'm most excited to see evolve. And I think that you might have some commentary here around the Watcher and the introduction of the Watcher. And I thought that opening sequence was very cool when they kind of had him appear with the monologue. Like, I don't interfere, I watch, and there's infinite timelines, and let's explore one, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, I like this energy. This is like matching what we got from Loki very well. Yes, it's like a new driven purpose. I love the actor that they got to voice the Watcher. He's incredible. So I was really satisfied with that. And I hope that the Watcher becomes more than that throughout this series. Yes. What did you think?
No, I loved the Watcher. And, you know, a lot of that monologue was pulled directly from the comics, which I thought was great. This particular Watcher is one that in the comics kind of has a history of showing up when things are about to get messy. He is somebody that interferes. But the thing that I guess excited me that I haven't seen a lot of other people talk about is that there is actually a Bucky Barnes comic book story that involves the Watcher. He goes after the Watcher and the Watcher's Council, and going after them, he ends up discovering a bunch of secrets, and that is what leads him to take up Nick Fury's position as Man on the Wall, which gets us
right on
Winter Soldier and intergalactic space romances and like the whole nine. And I don't necessarily think the MCU is going there, but I thought that it was interesting that there does seem to be quite a bit of Bucky and What If. We're getting him here, we're getting him in the zombie episode, and that we're introducing this Watcher and multiverses, and we know there's more space stuff coming. So I just thought that was kind of a nice and the
truth is we have like no idea what's coming, right? Like this was pretty close to the original plot of the movie. Like this was like, you know, as close as it gets really with minor changes. And I think that there's a lot of people excited and hoping that it's going to take on, like we're going to see things that are just completely out of left field. Like eventually, I'm not saying in this series, but eventually down the line, seeing the universe where Bucky is in Nick Fury's role. You know, like seeing these characters doing completely outlandish roles for how they've been originally scripted in the MCU and originally written. So I agree with you. I think that it's like so exciting that like there seems to be like nods to those parallels. Right. And it's just hoping that Marvel doesn't play it safe and they actually decide, even if it's in, like I was saying from the beginning with Loki, I thought they would do some wild sequence like 2 minutes long where you just see a bunch of random things happen that don't have meaning, but just as a nod to this could be something and that could be something. And maybe we'll see Tom Holland, but he's like from Canada instead of like America, or maybe we'll see like, you know, like just like random things that you wouldn't expect, but make sense in the context of multiple universes. So I still have hope that we'll get that eventually. I have hope for some things still with Phase 4. Some hope. We have a comment here from YouTube from Chi-Chi. Yes, I believe Jeffrey Wright was cast as the Watcher. He's brilliant in Westworld. Yes, and he's also, if there's any Hunger Games fans, he was in the Hunger Games as Beetee. Remember in Catching Fire, and he's the mastermind behind that plot. He's also brilliant in Westworld, and I think like his voice is very haunting. Like he gives a performance that's very haunting. So I think he was the perfect choice for this. And imagine if they brought him in to play the Watcher in like a real cast, like in the future. I'm just saying, I would be excited. I would watch. Maybe he's another version of Kong or something.
Right. Well, and I think the Watcher is such, in a lot of ways, is kind of this like higher level concept that introducing him in an animated show, I actually feel like is a really great way to go. I feel like if we saw this character in live action first, it may have been a little like, what? but like setting it up now with the gravitas that the voice actor was able to lend to it, I feel like there are possibilities now that if he was ever to show up in live action, that we would be like, oh, okay, yeah, the Watcher, as opposed to, huh?
Yes, exactly. And I have an image up. If you're watching on TikTok, you can come join us on Twitch and YouTube and you can see what we're referencing here. Have an image up of the Watcher and kind of like one of the animations that Disney Plus and Marvel posted of him today. And I just can't imagine them. It would be like the Teletubbies child as the sun. Do you know what I mean in Teletubbies? Like, imagine Jeffrey Wright like doing this. Like, they just couldn't, right?
No. But now that's what I'm going to envision. Now he's going to show up in live action and I'm going to be like, but you're not the sun.
But you're not the sun. It's the only, or the moon. Like, that's the only way I want to see it. Yeah. If you watch Rick and Morty, do you watch Rick and Morty?
No.
For those of you, no, for those of you that do, you know, in the newest season, you have like the baby in space. Like, that's how I want the Watcher to be. Like, I need that kind of crazy, big, like literally big energy. We have a comment on TikTok here. I can't wait for Black Panther Guardian crossover. Yes, that's one of the big plots coming. Let's talk about what's coming down the pipe in this series. I still am not sure where all of these episodes are going to go. Both in terms of what we know of them and then what we have to go on based off of this episode, where they're going to go and how they're going to end. So what are you looking forward to in terms of characters we're going to see, in terms of plots we know are coming, in terms of plots you hope are coming? What are you looking forward to?
I think like everybody, I'm really excited about the Black Panther as Star-Lord situation, because I feel like, while in some ways that feels a little out of left field, I actually think there are really cool ways to like ground that story. And it's more out there in that, like, I think many of the parallels we would get would be more nostalgic rather than like, this is exactly what happened, whatever. And like, to hear Chadwick Boseman again, I mean, I'm excited about all of it.
Exactly.
And I will admit that I was not a huge fan of zombies in the Marvel comics, but the idea of Bucky having to fight Zombie Steve, I have to have it. I just do. So
I have to have it. Absolutely.
There's so much to unpack there, and I just I need it. I need it really badly.
I'm with you. I'm with you completely. We might have to have an after party. Not unpacking that episode, but just unpacking that specifically. Moment. It's going to be a lot to take. I also, maybe you can provide some context here about zombies in the comics and kind of what we may expect from that coming. Because I know for me, I have a lot of questions around how they're actually going to make that work. I'm assuming that they're just going to say, oh, it's just like another timeline. It's another one. Welcome, everyone. We're now in timeline like 1,000,004 or whatever. And in this one, like, they're zombies. Enjoy the episode. And then the Watcher will say, I can't interfere. And we'll be like, all right. Sure. Yeah. So do you have any viewer guide to zombies in what we might expect?
I mean, there are actually, I was doing extra research on it, and there's one main comic storyline that has to do with zombies, and that's the one I think everybody thinks about. That one does take place on a different Earth. So like in the context of the show, it would be a very different timeline. There are a couple other zombie stories that have popped up over the years. Zombies are caused for like a variety of different reasons. What I had wanted to see, which I don't think is what we are going to get, is kind of a callback to one of the big zombie storylines in the comics, is the idea that somehow the serum turned people into zombies, and like that got, passed around. I don't think that's where they're going to go with the show. But that's kind of, I feel like that's just a really interesting concept.
Yes, I agree.
It's like, it's something that we invented to heighten humanity, and we're getting zombies. And like, what does that say? What is that commentary? But I'm not sure that that's where we're going to end up.
If they were to go that way with it, I would want to see them bring in the plot from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Make it a connection to that and be like, all right, we're continuing that in this one-off different timeline scenario where everything you saw about Super Soldier Serum is directly continued, and now they're zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoy. I think that would be, I don't feel like we're going to get that, but that would be interesting to explore. Something that I'm thinking about, and something that I've been seeing a lot of commentary around, is who the audience is for this series. right?
Okay.
And how WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki were very much meant for a similar demographic in that they were structured in similar ways. Mm-hmm. They had similar levels of drama and those arcs of high and low, lows and dramatic themes and adult themes and real world issues, and very grounded and very much continuations of what we already knew. So you had to have some seasoning of expertise from previous Marvel movies to really appreciate them to their full extent. And now we're kind of in this show that's completely different. Not only is it different in its format, it's animated, but we have plots we're revisiting in new ways. You can kind of watch it if you don't have a lot of Marvel context and still appreciate the show for what it is and just kind of enjoy the subtle twist. But I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Like, I wonder how the show is actually going to fit into phase 4, and if this is going to be, required viewing, like you need to have watched the show to understand what's happening next, or if it's kind of an experimentation that's just meant to be enjoyed for what it is and is not.
Right. Well, and I guess my thought too was that maybe Marvel was doing that intentionally. Maybe it was an intentional experimentation to see what the reaction was and see how much they could involve in, in the MCU. I do, though, with you saying that, I think what my mind went to first was like, but how is this episode if you didn't see Captain America: The First Avenger? Like, was it better or was it weirder? I don't know. But I do understand what you're saying. I think looking at the other shows, I think the audience they were expecting and that the shows were written for was kind of their classic audience, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I definitely don't think that applies to this show. But I don't think this one is necessarily made for children. I don't, I just don't think it's quite hitting there.
So who is it hitting, right? It's like
it's
adults.
Not quite hitting us. Like, I don't know where it's.
Who is this fulfilling? It's an interesting question. I feel like it's not going to make any more sense as we keep going, to be completely honest. I feel like we're just going to continue to have these questions and wonder, and maybe when we have the series wrapped, we'll be able to see if it was kind of meant to live on its own or if it actually does feed into something larger. I think it has potential to be either.
Yes.
Didn't really seem like we had much of an overarching plot to be excited about versus in the Loki after parties. For those of you that watched the Loki after parties, we spent the entire first episode making predictions for what was to come and saying, this casting, these characters, this is how it could connect, blah, blah, blah. And with this, it's like, okay, the only thing could be if the Watcher becomes involved, and perhaps that leads to something coming down the line, because or they just decide they're going to remake all of these plots with a live cast in future Marvel endeavors. There's not really a lot of room to go with this.
Right.
What do you think?
I mean, I think that the idea is important moving forward, right? I think in a lot of ways that this may be to get us ready for the idea that different multiverses different universes do exist. And these are things, they're all different. And these are things that happen in all of them. And that was my expectation, right? That this show is to get us ready for that idea. I think there were maybe possibly some better ways to do that. But I get what they were going for, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, totally.
Yes. Maybe it was just to get us used to that.
Yeah. Introduce us to it. Warm us up to it. If we have Doctor Strange coming as a classified at one point horror movie for Marvel called The Multiverse of Madness.
Yes.
This is a really soft way of sliding the idea and kind of warming everyone up to what might be a wild roller coaster of a movie coming next year.
Agreed.
And if that's the case, then I am down to watch the show, watch it with all of you, and enjoy it for what it is. Absolutely. There's one scene that I don't know if we've really held back throughout this, but there's one scene that if we weren't going to hold back on, the moment is now to talk about it. So if you're watching, would love to hear your commentary on this as well. And if you felt the same, the scene that I want to end this conversation on is Peggy and Steve in the bar. let's start with the positives of this scene. And I will let you speak on this point about the Jeep. Because that really was the positive of this moment. Bucky comes in with a Jeep. What were your thoughts here?
That to me was the positive part of this moment. The positive part of this moment was Bucky stole a Jeep. Like, that was it.
That was it.
I do think, kind of straying a little bit, but I'll make my way back.
Yeah.
That, like, the bar parallels in What If were fascinating, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I was talking to one of my friends who's in production. This is what she does. She does this kind of work. And she was saying, you know, that they really try to cram a lot into such a short period of time. And thinking about it that way, I guess I was fascinated by what they chose to include, like the parallels that they chose to make. And one of them for me was her later comment about whiskey. Like, oh, I would have, you know, I'd like a good glass of whiskey, but like, just for you, Steve, who doesn't know, I metabolize it now and like cannot get drunk. Because that's something I think, as somebody who has seen the other stuff, like, yes, we've been over this. We have intimate knowledge of how beer does or doesn't affect super soldiers, right?
And it seems like Marvel is very hung up on that specific point. Like, that's very pressing to the people in the writer's room, that we understand they cannot get drunk.
Right. And like, I remember Falcon, Captain America, and the Winter Soldier, that everybody was like, well, Bucky's drinking beer. So like, you know, is that supposed to be some commentary on like the amount of the serum he did or did not receive, right? Or like whatever. So I just thought it was funny that like they have that parallel in the bar with she and Steve. Then they bring up the bar again, and then they have the whiskey. And it was like, these were moments that you thought were like, these were important.
These were the ones. They were important. In your 30 minutes of script, this is the hill you wanted to die on.
And I guess I want to know why.
Yeah. What is the greater meaning here, Marvel? Because it's not explicitly clear. I'm with you completely.
And I'm like, fine. I'm down with a gal like tossing back whiskey. Like, I'm cool with that. It was just like, okay, cool. She doesn't get drunk. We get it.
We get it. That's nice. Really glad we revisited that point in the midst of a war, in the midst of the Tesseract, in the midst of, but like all of these things happening. We decided to spend our valuable time here. I find something I really enjoy about TV specifically, and why I'm drawn to TV, when you think of a show like New Girl, right? If you've watched New Girl, you know that every moment of script, especially in the later series in New Girl, like, there is no accidental referencing. There's no accidental moment. Everything is always tied up at some point, whether it be in that episode or throughout the greater plots. And it's very smart writing for that reason, because you know that everything is intentional. And I could say the opposite about this episode, because there was so much that did not feel intentional, including, you know, the nod to the whiskey, like you said. And I think that having some of those callbacks, like the one that they got right was definitely Bucky on the train. Yes. Whoa, thanks. You've almost ripped my arm off. Like, that is a moment that is funny and exactly like you described earlier, works perfectly. And then you have the bar scene, and it's so many. The Jeep didn't make sense. Howard watching them have an almost intimate moment didn't make sense. Steve's pick-me energy once again did not make sense.
And it was awkward, right? Like, it felt awkward. It was awkward.
Yes, I think that's a very good call out, to just call it what it was. It was awkward to watch. And the piece of it that really is the hill I'm gonna die on with this episode, and I said it before we went live and I'm saying it again, is Steve saying to Peggy, now your outsides match your insides, and how strong she was. And that was the biggest facepalm line I have ever heard from Marvel. And they've done some dumb shit over the years. Like, and I think Marvel would even own up to that, with, you know, how some jokes become outdated after a while. And they own that. And they've tried to give characters growth that's meaningful and reflective. And I give them credit for the growth that they have had. And then you're going to have Steve turn to Peggy. How many people watched that episode before it went live, right? Like, how many women, how many editors, how many producers, how many people at Marvel, how many people at Disney signed off on that? Your outsides finally match your insides to make the point that Peggy was not strong as a woman before she took the super soldier serum. And you're trying to have this episode really stand as a feminist moment for Peggy Carter. Really, like, you can tell that was a part of the intention of this, right? Was to show, what if we had a woman as the first Avenger? What if it was Peggy, and like, we know how strong and powerful she is and she knows her shit and and no. And then you're going to just bring it right back to a line like that from someone that's supposed to be her love interest, someone that's supposed to be believing in her. It just didn't make sense. And it didn't make sense to the nature of Steve Rogers either, I think. I really felt like it was just classless in that moment. And thank God Bucky stole the Jeep and showed up when he did to cut off that entire conversation.
Well, and I think a point that for me, I wanted it to be in a world where they were choosing Peggy, right? And I actually feel like that is a better feminist statement. But I think one of the things that keeps standing out to me about this scene is that while I am not a huge Steve and Peggy fan, like, the way Captain America, the First Avenger was written to me, I got it. They felt matched to me. Like, I understood the relationship. And to me, in this, I didn't. It didn't feel matched, mostly because of lines like that one. Like, I was, yeah.
Yes.
But I think if I sat across from a man I was interested in and he made a comment like that to me, I was probably taking my whiskey and leaving.
I want everyone to imagine, especially if you are someone that does not identify as a woman watching this, okay? I just want everyone close their eyes for a second, okay? Imagine you've had a rough day. You've had a couple rough days. You're having like a rough go, right? Like, there's a lot you're dealing with, perhaps a war. Right? Perhaps you're one of the only people that can stop the war potentially and something destructive from happening. So you're having a rough go. And you finally sit down for a moment of reflection after all you've been through. And someone has the audacity to say, at least your outsides match your insides. What? It makes sense on no level, because the other piece, perhaps if Peggy had voiced at some point in the episode, I wish I was strong, like physically strong enough to go fight on the field. Like, if she had voiced that was something she wanted, perhaps I could have allowed it. Perhaps I could have said, okay, at least she's voiced this to Steve, that this is what she's always wanted.
Right.
But it comes out of nowhere for Steve to say that to her. And because of that, it's like, who is this Steve Rogers? I don't know him. This is not Chris Evans. This is not Chris Evans, Steve Rogers. Who is this man?
Yeah. And like, it's not a comfort. I think that's what like gets me, is that it was definitely meant as like I feel like as like a comfort to her, but that's not comforting. And like, it's especially not comforting because now within the world of this show, she seems to fit nowhere. Like, she can't go on the USO tour. Like, Bradley Whitford doesn't want her in the West Wing. Like, she doesn't fit anywhere. Like, so it's not.
Yeah, and no one's believing her either, except for Steve.
Right.
And the one person, well, maybe Howard and maybe Bucky. You can make some arguments, but really, the one person she's confiding in, that is the choice words.
Yes.
Immediately followed by him playing his own victim card, saying, oh, at least you're in the room because no one listens to me. And her having to become the comforter in that moment. Being like, oh no, Steve, don't worry, Steve. You white man with so much privilege, you're fine. Like, don't worry, allow me to comfort you.
And also no one was listening to her. So like it was faceless. At that point, nobody was listening to her, Steve.
You're completely correct. And the thought that came to mind that I'm trying to now frame in an expression that's just not entirely angry is how threatened by her did he have to be in that moment?
Exactly.
To say that. And then to have it framed to the audience as a moment of romantic expression. these two people sharing their woes and like, leaning on each other for support. That's not what it was. That's what they wanted us to see it as. But no, it was Peggy having extremely valid concerns, being gaslit, and then having to turn around and be the supporter in that moment.
Yeah. And it's very much like, I need you to lower yourself from me so that I feel better about myself. Right. That's the crux.
Ding, ding, ding. I need like a ding, ding, ding animation on this string. It's like that is the point. That is
just thank God Bucky stole a Jeep.
Who knew that a Jeep sponsorship was really the answer to getting rid of gaslighting in Marvel? Like, is that what we needed this whole time?
Now, anytime it happens in a Marvel film, I need somebody to edit Bucky and his Jeep.
Baby. Oh, I want to read a comment that I'm just seeing on my stream now. I hope it's okay that I'm reading this out loud to the person that commented this. They're saying, as a trans person, that line was ... interesting with its implications. Thank you for sharing that. I cannot imagine how that must have felt to watch that moment in all of its felt for the progress that Marvel should be credited for throughout other projects that were not this. This felt like a moment where you have to really wonder how much progress is actually being made internally, right? If things are changing internally, lines like that wouldn't have made it to a final cut. So now I have to wonder, we're having T'Challa becoming Star-Lord, being raised by space ravagers. What are going to be the implications of that experience? I hope that it is good. I hope it is not what we saw from the writing of this episode. And I hope that we see plots that are a little bit more thoughtful moving forward, because moments like this are not reflective of my MCU. This is not my Steve Rogers.
It is my Jeep, but it's
not my Jeep, but it's not my Steve Rogers.
I stand the Jeep.
We
need a Funko Pop of the Jeep. That's what I want for this show.
A Funko Pop of Bucky and the Jeep.
That's what I want.
I'm adding it to the merch, everyone. So I've been playing with ideas for the shop I want to open. I've always wanted to open a merch store. It's always been something I've wanted to do. Not of my own self-serving, but just of I think it's funny to have like fashionable fandom merch, and I want to start making it. So part of what I've been experimenting with is like these after parties like come out with gold, like exactly what you're saying, Bucky and the Jeep, right? So should I make merch specific to each after party based on like the jokes that we say? And I would wear something that has Bucky driving a Jeep. So perhaps I need to go sit on that and see what I can come up with.
One of my favorite Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite podcasts of all time did that. Like every season, they would just pick like a random joke that had really worked, that had like come out of their conversation, and they would put it on a shirt, and then you got to like get it as like a memory of that season, and like part of like the In Club, and I have them all. So it
you have them all. Perfect. Okay, so maybe this is an idea worth exploring. I love it. If Chi-Chi's still watching on YouTube, I know she commented earlier, there was an amazing joke from the Loki after party, one of the last ones, that Chi-Chi commented out saying like she needed it on a shirt. And it was, we were talking about the Mobius fan club and the Owen Wilson fan club and how our after party had just evolved into a series of conversations around Owen Wilson and how we all wanted shirts that said "Ka-chow besties."
Yes.
So I do have a Ka-chow besties design coming down the pipeline. That will be our reflection of the Loki after parties, and perhaps Bucky stole a Jeep, and something around that is going to be what we will get out of this after party. And we said something else earlier in the episode that I don't remember right now, but I will go back and find it, about misogyny.
Oh yeah,
remember? You know what I mean?
But I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
I'll go back and find it, and I'll consider that as well, because there's been a lot of talk around like more feminist Marvel merch, and I'm like, if anyone's gonna make feminist Marvel merch, it has like I will own that. I'll carry that baton for all of us. Some more inclusive messaging surrounding female superheroes. Here's maybe what we'll do. What if I rewrote this episode myself and we perform it next after party?
Without the fish.
Without the fish. We didn't even talk about how many fish references there were. Let's walk through this. Oh, wow. Who ordered the calamari? I think that's the only one I have a photo of. But yes, many, many fish references in this episode. Again, grounded in nothing, tied to nothing.
When I say my inbox was filled with people asking me, I was like, I now must reread all these comics because surely I have missed an important Bucky Fish storyline somewhere and I just don't remember it. But I really don't think that I have. And there is a comic where he mentions pancake houses. He mentions it one time and like Tumblr blew up. And was like, all Bucky eats are pancakes, right? So I was like, maybe there's just a one-time fish line somewhere. And I may find it a year from now and be like, oh, that must have been what it was.
The fact that the pancake reference to Tumblr pipeline story is enough proof that there is no fish reference. You don't miss in your assessments of what is and is not in the comics. So I really just feel like someone had fish for lunch and said, you know what? This is going to be Bucky's entire personality in this episode. It's just going to be
confusion and fish.
And at first, I thought, the Bucky that we see very briefly in the beginning of First Avenger is kind of like this charming, the kind of stereotypical charming war era army man. Right. And you do see that in like those first scenes with him. And he's like excited to, have his title and represent his country and whatever else. And I kind of thought that maybe like when the Queen of England line happened. Oh my God, I'm losing all of my images here in the stream. When he says the Queen of England line, I thought maybe we were getting a reference to that. And getting a reference to him being like, oh, like you're the Queen of England and we're Americans, like something. And then it just spiraled into fish territory and had like no grounding in this charming wartime guy. I
was racking my brain because I played in 1940s theater for a really long time. It's what I did for most of my life. And I was like, I swear we didn't make fish jokes either. Like, I swear that wasn't just a 40s thing either. Like, I don't think in like 10 years of 1940s radio dramas there was ever a joke about fish. So I am just missing a lot.
So from every angle, my camera stopped focusing. Hold on, let me see if I can. Hello. There we go. From every angle of this conversation, there is no justification. Not from the comics. It's not from the 40s. It's not from Bucky in the MCU. It's just some choices. It was a choice.
But I appreciate that people thought I would know. I do appreciate that. I don't, but thanks for trying.
Oh my God. We just got the best comment. Okay. If I can make this design happen, you should follow me on Instagram and I'll make sure that you get this for free because this person just comments, wait, OMG, what if the shirt was a fish in a Jeep?
Like you have to die. I need it.
But I just imagining like going anywhere in a sweater like that and somebody seeing you and being like, what are you wearing? Me being like a fish driving a Jeep. That is what this is. But I love it. I think that's hilarious.
The fish driving this Jeep saved us from worse misogyny. So like he was doing a service to mankind. He was trying real hard.
The hero we didn't know we needed from Marvel.
Yes.
They're saying I would wear it every day. All right, a fish driving a Jeep it is. I will do my magic, people, and see what I can come up with. And I think we should also just clarify. I think we talked about this before we went live. I'm not sure if we mentioned it during this the live. The squid also has no reference that they're fighting at the end.
there are squid monsters in the comics. I have seen people debate which squid monster this was supposed to represent. So yes, I mean, there is some kind of context for him. What I do not understand is what domino we changed in this multiverse that led to squid monsters. That's the pipeline. I'm not on track there.
We're not following how that
I followed all the domino super, super well. I got to Bucky is not the Winter Soldier, and then there were squid monsters. And I don't know. There's a gap in there.
So when they put the Tesseract in like the machine they had, right? When the Red Skull was they're doing their thing, my mind went to like other Marvel movies where like that they did that and like a character came out.
Right.
And I was like, oh, like are they about to bring in like I thought like Thanos or something? Are they gonna bring in like, like Kong or something? Like, I was like, oh, maybe this is like, maybe this is the moment that's going to tie every episode together or something, that like there's this person traveling through, maybe it'll be a Loki variant, like, and then it was like a squid.
Just more fish.
It's more fish.
More fish. That's it.
That was it. That was all, folks. So a lot of questions. The bar is low moving forward. Unfortunately, a great day to be a Stucky shipper, though. Yes. A great day to be a Stucky shipper. I think that if you look at Peggy on her own in this episode, it was kind of cool to see her as a super soldier.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
I think that like it was an avenue worth exploring. I'm still excited to see where they go. Exactly. We have Victoria in the chat saying, I feel like it can only go up. I agree. Hopefully. And we have more Bucky on the way. So for us Bucky fans, we still have a lot to hold on to here and a lot to be hopeful for. What do you think?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it goes up. I do think it goes up from here. I think something too that this so going into this episode, to go back to your conversation about television, a show I really enjoy watching is Fringe, and Fringe had a multiverse, and they did a really good job of like that every parallel that was a change was really meaningful. So if something had been changed from one multiverse to another, it meant something, right? So like in their universe, maybe they chose science over healthcare, so they have flying cars, but that means they still have smallpox. Like it was a meaningful change. I think I went into this show thinking that all the changes were going to be meaningful, and I think that they're not. So I think moving forward, just kind of embracing that, like,
it's exploratory,
right? Yeah,
as opposed to like deeply meaningful. Yes, I think that approaching it from that kind of fun perspective, like that element of exploration, definitely will manage expectations. And that's how I'll go into episode 2, is just like a fun exploration of a new twist on Marvel that I know and love. I feel like my reaction to this episode would have been aided if the writing had not been misogynistic. So that is the hill I'm gonna die on with this episode, is that unfortunately I can't get behind it at this point, and I hope that the future episodes see the characters done justice and not microaggressed.
Yep.
I'm guessing it'll be Doctor Strange's episodes that will start tying it together. Yeah, exactly. And Doctor Strange seems to be tying things together and throughout all of Phase 4. So perhaps when we see Doctor Strange step in here as well, we'll get some clarification on the meaning of the show, or perhaps it'll just be fun. And if it's just fun, then we'll keep having fun here at the after parties too, right, Alexis?
Yes.
Amazing. So on that note, any final thoughts on this amazing pilot?
Honestly, I'm trying to think. No, surely we covered it all. Surely
I feel like we covered it all. We really did. So everyone that watched on YouTube and Twitch, thank you so much for watching. Everyone that watched on TikTok, thank you so much for watching. Anything in your comments that you want to call out before we sign off here?
Nope. I think we're good.
We're covered it. Awesome. So I'll just remind everyone that Alexis and I will be hosting after parties for every episode of What If, and we'll have some special guests coming in as well. So if you don't see Alexis, you might see another creator that you love joining me up here, or you might see us with multiple folks. Who's to say? If you want to tell us what you think of the episodes, you don't just have to wait for us to go live. There's a link in my bio, my anchor.fm link, and you can send us a voice recording of you reacting to the episode with your theories, your anger, what you laughed at, what you want us to talk about. So you can go to the link anytime. You can do it right now. We can talk about your reaction to this episode next week. You can wait till the next episode airs and you can react then. But send us your thoughts and we will play them live and react to them and chat directly with you all, or keep your comments coming throughout the week as well. On Instagram, producer Liz and Alexis Blake Reads Comics on Instagram that's your handle. Yes. I got that right. Amazing. And we will come back next week and we'll chat with all of you again about what's happening. And a reminder, once again, how crazy is it that we have a sponsor to talk about? I want to show everyone before we get off live. And if you're on TikTok, now is the time to come. Oh my God, I have to move my TikTok screen so I can do this properly. Now is the time to come join us on Twitch and YouTube, because I'm going to just very quickly share with everyone the amazing sponsors that we have for the season of What If. Grindhouse Apparel, apparel for the culture. They print vintage movie posters onto clothing, which is so cool. James Dean, King Kong, all kinds of cool stuff. If you're into vintage cinema, if you're into pop culture, stuff you have to have in your closet. They sent me a whole bunch of clothing, sweaters, and shirts. I'm wearing my James Bond shirt tonight. I've got my James Dean sweater on standby in case I got cold. And there's a whole video on my profile unboxing what they sent. So if you're interested, feel free to check it out. And you can use the code StarkRadio for 10% off your order. I always wanted to say something like this. So let's just live in the moment for a second, that there's enough of us that get together and talk about Marvel that people actually want to sponsor the show. How crazy is that?
Wonderful. It's awesome. You got to be that. And I was like, what?
Isn't that crazy? I did not start all of this with an expectation that that's what this would become. You know, all I wanted was for everyone to feel like they had a space to actually talk with friends and a community to enjoy content with. Because I think that that's the best part of Marvel, is that you can go to the theater and you can go on premiere night and sit with 100 people and scream at the screen together. Yes. And, you know, we're all watching from our own screens this show. And TikTok is great because we can post videos reacting and sharing our thoughts. But this face-to-face time is really part of the joy of being a Marvel fan. So the fact that we can all come together makes me so happy. And the fact that sponsors see that and want to be a part of it too is so cool. So cool. It's a thrill. It's a thrill to be with all of you. And I'm going to hang up on YouTube and Twitch, and I'm going to hang up on TikTok as well. Thank you all for joining us. If you go to my Instagram, you can turn on notifications for next week's episode. Same time, same place on all platforms. And make sure you follow Alexis as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
I'm going to hang up here on TikTok first, because that's always the more annoying one. There we go. All right. Bye, everyone on YouTube and Twitch. Bye.
Bye.